Have you ever been in a... Have you ever been in a... Have you ever been in a... Have you ever been in a situation where you said to yourself, there ought to be a law? I know you've been in a situation where something wasn't right and nobody was doing anything about it. And even though you wanted to do something, you didn't quite know how. Well, if you take just a moment, we're going to explain how your thoughts can be turned into action, how an action becomes a bill, and how a bill becomes a law.
The California Channel and the California cable industry presents How a Bill Becomes a Law with your host, Alex Mirchev and Bill. And now, here's Alex.
What is a bill? Well, a bill is simply a proposed change in the law, or even a brand new law. And we refer to it as legislation. Most often, it's someone just like you, who sees a need and brings a problem or an issue to the attention of their senator or assembly member. It can start with something simple, a letter, or a phone call, or a chance meeting. The process begins when your assembly member or senator believes that your thoughts are for the common good. It is their job to bring before our legislators your concerns. They do this first by consulting the Legislative Council. What's the Legislative Council, you ask? Well, that's a group of attorneys that serves the Senate and the Assembly, and it's their job to make sure that everything in your bill is correct and conforms with current rules and regulations. The Legislative Council actually writes down your bill. This happened recently. Someone wanted to protect young people from head injuries and death while they were riding their bikes. So they got in touch with their state representatives and told them that there ought to be a law requiring everyone under 18 wear a helmet whenever they rode a bike. And the process began. Here to help me show you how this bill became a law is a friend of mine, Bill.
I'm ready. Let's go!
Once the Legislative Council has written your bill down, it needs to be introduced in one of the two houses of the legislature. And the senator or assembly member who first introduces it is referred to as the bill's author. A bill that begins in the Senate is given the name of the author and a sequential number that begins with SB. A bill that begins in the Assembly is given a name and a sequential number that begins with AB. In this case, our bill became Assembly Bill AB 2268, and its author was Assembly Member Luis Caldera. To ensure that each legislator knows about the bill, state law requires that it be read to the full Assembly 3 times on 3 different days. The first time it is read, it must be read by a staff member from the Chief Clerk's office. It now becomes part of the daily file and will become part of the daily order of business that will be taken up by the Assembly. After this reading, the bill is given to the Assembly Rules Committee, and law requires that 30 days go by before anything can be done with it. During this 30-day waiting period, the Assembly Rules Committee meets to refer our bill to one of the legislative standing committees.
What's a standing committee?
Well, just like you have senators and assembly members representing you, the Senate and the Assembly has specific members grouped into committees that represent them to research specific issues like law enforcement, insurance, and transportation. In our case, Assembly Bill 2268 was referred to the Transportation Committee. You better hurry. Once in a committee, the members talk about the bill looking at it from all sides. Everyone who wants to can come before the members and speak to the committee and give their testimony.
Any objection,
I'll
Mr.
restrain myself and simply vote no, Mr. Calder.
From bicycle accidents in this state at a cost of $200,000 for each serious injury, $4.5 million cost, lifetime cost for those head injuries that were severe, and bicycle helmets can reduce that head injury by 85%. We have no ordinances now in California that completely
When all sides of the issue are explored, the Standing Committee has the option of making one of 3 recommendations to the full Assembly. If the bill is complete and needs no changes, they can pass the bill out of the committee. If the bill needs some changes, the committee can make them and then pass the bill out of the committee as amended. Or it can defeat the bill. They decide this by taking a vote, and the majority rules.
O'Connell, Polanco, Quackenbush,
Our bill was passed out of committee as amended, and now it goes to the full Assembly for the purpose of approving the committee's recommendations and for its second reading. At this point, the bill is looked at to see if it's going to cost the state money. If it's not going to cost any money, then it's held over for at least 1 full day, then it moves to the floor for its 3rd reading and for a vote. But if it is going to cost the state money, or really even if it just might cost the state money, it has to go to another standing committee called the Appropriations Committee.
What about me? Am I going to cost the state any money?
Well, you might, so it's off to the Appropriations Committee for you to find out. The Appropriation Committee's only concern is to see just how the bill will affect the state financially. The Appropriations Committee can either pass the bill, make more changes in the bill, or defeat the bill.
Murray. Nolan. O'Connell. Polanco. Quackenbush. Seastrand.
In our case,
Wood-
AB 2268 is a bill that will completely pay for itself through the fines the state will collect when people disobey the law. So our bill is passed out of committee without any further changes and is now on its way to the Assembly floor for its third and final reading. Up until now, only a few members of the Assembly have actually looked at the bill. But after its third reading, the full Assembly can take up the measure and the debate can begin. All sides of the issue will now be brought up before the full Assembly. Some of the Assembly will be for the bill,
that an 8-year-old girl suddenly lost control of her bicycle as she was riding down the hill and broke her neck and died. I've never forgotten that. Our school district then passed mandatory bicycle helmets. This is an outstanding bill for the children of California. I urge your aye vote.
some will be against the bill.
But it's not a good idea to pass another law that we can't enforce and won't do the job anyway. It's not going to prevent any loss of life. I urge a no vote on the bill.
And some will have questions for the author.
I would like to ask him if he has letters from law enforcement that indicate their support of this bill and if he'd share that with the body.
Yes, we do, and the California Highway Patrol testified very forcefully for this measure.
After all sides have been heard, all 80 members of the Assembly will be asked to vote on the bill.
How many will it take to pass me?
Well, that's a good question. If a bill is going to cost the state any money, it requires 2/3 of the members voting to pass it.
I'm not going to cost the state any money.
Right. Like we talked about before, AB 2268 won't cost the state any money. So it only requires a simple majority of the members voting to pass it.
Somebody stop this thing.
Well, we got the simple majority we needed, and our bill passed the Assembly with 43 yes votes to 27 no votes. Assembly Bill 2268 now must go to the Senate. And the process begins all over again. Bill referral, committee assignments, appropriations, discussions, questions, and finally to its third reading and a debate on the floor of the Senate. And just like in the Assembly, there will be those who are for the
Perhaps
bill.
if we just save one child from having to go into an operating room because of a bicycle accident and a head injury, we will have done a great deal. I ask for an aye vote.
Those who are against it.
If this is such a good idea, why doesn't it apply to adults as well as children?
After all sides were heard, what did the Senate do? Well, they wanted to make a few small changes in the bill, and they did. And then all 40 senators were asked to vote on the bill.
Johnston, Maddie, McCorgadale.
With a few small changes, our bill passed the Senate with 21 yes votes and 14 no votes. Since the Senate changed our bill a bit, now it has to go back to the Assembly to make sure that they agree with the changes. Come on, hurry up. Once back at the Assembly, members will vote on only the changes.
All members vote who desire to vote.
And what did they do? They passed the changes and made them part of the bill.
I passed again. Am I a law yet?
Well, not quite. You did pass both houses of the legislature, but we still have one more important stop to make. Come on. When a bill comes to the governor's desk, 3 things can happen. The governor can sign the bill, and it becomes a law. The governor doesn't sign the bill, and in 12 days it becomes a law without his signature. Or the governor can veto the bill, and the bill does not become a law. But if this happens, all is not lost for the bill. It can go back through the process, and the veto can be overridden by a 2/3 yes vote